Hey, hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining. It's great to see so many people here prioritising their CPD so late on in the term. Maybe you've broken up already. I don't know, but yeah, I hope you all had a good last few weeks of term. You've got a couple of weeks to go. Hope your students are still engaging their learning. Possibly they're not, but fingers crossed that that's all going as well as it could. So nice to see everyone joining. I'm just going to explain a few logistical things for how we're going to work with this Zoom call. So I will in a moment be presenting my screen and doing all that stuff and showing you everything to do with Seneca and how that works with Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams. And if I imagine you guys will have questions that come up over the time of the session. So what I'd suggest is during the call, if you've got any questions, you can just click the chat button at the bottom of your screen on Zoom, and that should load up a little chat section down the right hand side. Now what you'll be able to do is then just ask any questions there, and at an appropriate time, probably towards the end of the session, I will come back and have a look through all of those. So in terms of what I'm going to cover today, so I'm going to show you the basics of how Google Classroom and Teams links up with Seneca, so you can understand how you can make that transition as seamless as possible. If you want to share this session with your colleagues or catch up with it afterwards, it will be available on our Seneca CPD YouTube channel. And also after the event, I will send you all an email that will have some key links and some help pages and things like that to learn how you can get started if you haven't done so already. So it's going to be broken down into three sections really. So I'm going to have one section that looks at just general background on Seneca and what Seneca actually is. Seneca might be new to some people in this room, but also looking at what Google Classroom is and what Teams is. We're then going to move on to looking at actually what Seneca looks like from both a student's perspective and also from a teacher's perspective, and how that links up across Teams and Google Classroom. And then we'll go on to the third section, which will be looking at some questions for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. And yeah, please keep the questions coming as I talk. Don't feel like you have to wait until the end. And what I'll do is I'll come back and have a look at them towards the end, and I'll select a few that I think might be the most useful to go through. So if you just give me a second, and I'll share my screen. So you should all be able to see that now, hopefully. So yeah, in terms of what Seneca is and what we do, we're an online learning platform that allows you to set homework, set assignments, allows distance learning, and we provide both content and questions and for students, and then obviously data for teachers. And some of the best things about Seneca are, first of all, it's based on the cognitive science of learning. So what has been proven to be effective in learning, we automatically bake that into our system. So you don't have to worry about whether your students are or aren't learning using the most effective learning strategies. It just happens automatically. Secondly, everything's automated on there, so you and your marking is going to be basically non-existent, but you will get lots and lots of data to allow you to track progress on it. So that's again really useful as diagnostic tools, and also thinking about what interventions you need to put in place for your students. And the last one is that it's completely adaptive. So what that means is that as a student goes through a learning session, they will the session will automatically adapt to the individual. So if you stood behind two students and watched them go through the same session, it would look completely different, because the students would be answering the questions differently, and therefore the content that we show would be different. Be that giving more support to students who are struggling, or potentially moving people onto harder content if they're doing really well. So that's sort of the basics of it. I won't go in detail into the cognitive science of this, but because I think it's easier, or it's better to spend time in this session as you've come to look at Teams and Google Classroom, to spend the time looking at that and how the integration works with that. So what I'm going to do is just move on to what our platform looks like. I'm going to show it to you from first of all, a teacher's perspective, so you can see how that all works. So this is one of our teacher accounts. So you'll see I've got 3 classes here, a bit of a random mix because I'm not a real teacher, but this would be an example. You'd have your classes with whatever names you set here. Now, creating a class on Seneca is very easy. You've just got a big button here to create class. You can just click that and you give it a name. Let's call it a Google Classroom demo, just as an example. But you could call it whatever you wanted. And then you've got some steps to go down here. So this is where the first sort of step of your integration with Google Classroom and or Microsoft Teams, whichever you're using in your school, sort of comes in. So first of all, we need to add courses. So I'll show you what these courses look like in a moment, but you can basically select any courses from, in this case, the UK curriculum, but we also have local curriculum courses across the US and lots of other places as well. So if you're from those countries, you can have a look at them there. So you can select the subjects. So say I wanted to do, what should we go for today? Go for a history one, for example. You can select the exam board. And yes, that's an important point to mention. Everything on here is exam board specific, so it's exactly what your students need to know. And you can also choose the age group, so I'll choose the GCSE courses. So as a teacher here, I'm just selecting what courses I want my students to use with me as their teacher, okay? So I want to choose, let's say, these 7, okay? So I've just clicked on them here, and they've selected those with these little ticks, as you can see. So I can just add courses. That basically creates those courses linked to this class. Now, what you can do now is create an assignment. So if I create an assignment, what I'm asking my students to do is basically saying, okay, within these history courses, I want you to go and do this section of it. So let's look at this conflict and tension between East and West. So I can go in, and this is the course. We can select any sections we want from here. So we can look at wartime conferences, whatever it is, Truman Doctrine, whatever it is you want to select. You can, again, select as many or as few as you want. Something quite nice up here is it gives you a little demo, a little indication of how long we'd expect that to take. So 12 to 20 minutes. So you can think about that. And then you can assign that to your students. So let's call it Truman Doctrine. You can set a start and an end date, so your students will see that on their Seneca accounts after the start date. So that's quite nice. You can plan ahead and you can think about how that works. So when I click create, that gets pushed out into your students on Seneca. But you obviously want to think about how maybe you can link this into Google Classroom, or Microsoft Teams. I'll show you that in a second. But the last section is invite your students. So at the moment, this is just a class, a bit like Microsoft Teams and Google Classroom. When you first set up your class, there's nobody in there. You need to invite your students to it. So if I invite my students here, you can see here I've got links to Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams. So let me just show you what that looks like. If I click on the Google Classroom, for example, what I'm able to do is share a joining link that will go straight into, that will take the student to join the class on Seneca. So say I want to choose which class I'm going to do. Let's say I want to choose this Year 9 maths group that I've got here. And I can choose an action. Now, you can either create assignments. This is just general things you can do in Google Classroom. So within Google Classroom, you have options of setting assignments, asking questions, making announcements, and also creating different materials. So you can choose what you want to do. What I'd suggest is you'd make an announcement for this. And basically, because this is asking students to join the class. So you put that in there, you press go. You then share the information with your class. So join your Seneca class with this link. whatever makes sense for you in this setting. And move myself there. You can select who you want it to set for. So at the moment, this is just my year 9 class. I could set it for both if I wanted to, both my classes, but I'm just going to set it for one. And you can also segment by students as well. So you can choose who you want to send this to as well. That could be quite useful sometimes. Something quite nice as well is you can schedule this for later or save it as a draft if you want, depending on how you want to use it, or you can just post it straight away. So I'm just going to post it straight away so we can see what happens. You then get the option to view that post. So if I click on view, you'll be able to see what it looks like from a student's perspective. Now, I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of what the functionality is on Google Classroom. We'll do that in another webinar, but we're going to look at how this links in with Seneca specifically. So you can see here within the stream section of Google Classroom in this class, what students would see is this announcement I've just made. So join your class, your Seneca class with this link. This is that announcement. If a student then comes in and clicks on that, what will happen is it will take them to that class on Seneca and it will automatically enroll them in that class. So it makes that process nice and straightforward. You literally post the announcement, they click on it, and then they can go and access it. So there you go, you've just joined demo, Google Classroom demo. And then if you click continue, it will take you through to the class. There are these courses that I added earlier. And here is this assignment I set earlier as well. So it's a nice straightforward process to do that and for your students to get back into Google Classroom. Now, it's a very similar process with Teams, but I'll just talk you through it quickly. So I want to invite my students here. So again, if I chose, I also wanted to do it on Teams this time, I could click on Teams. Again, in a very similar way to what's just happened on Google Classroom, I can share that with my group. So it looks slightly different because it's obviously a different product, but I can share with this year 10 maths group I've got, for example. And again, I can say something specific. So I can say, join the Seneca class. In the same way, okay? And when I share that to my students, your link has been shared. And again, if I just show you what that looks like from a student's perspective, you'll see this is the year 10 maths group, and it's in the channel maths here under the team of year 10. And you can see here that post I've just made has just come up. And if a student clicks on this link, the same process will happen. It will take them through into their Seneca, to join the Seneca class, and then take them through into the class where they can see the courses and the upcoming assignments. So that's how you basically, a really good way, really easy way to share the joining codes and how to get your students to join your class on Seneca using both Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams. Now, we talked a bit about assignments. So what you can also do is when you set it, so that first assignment, I didn't need to share that assignment with them because it came as part of the process of inviting them. But when you go on to set future assignments, what you can do is if you go into the assignments tab here and you just click create assignment, again, the process would be the same as it was earlier. I'd choose my course and then I'd choose which sections I wanted to set. Again, I could choose whatever I wanted. I could assign it to my students. At the moment, it's just one student in there, me, because I'm the only one who's joined right now. But others would be added to that assignment automatically. Again, I can give it another name. Let's give it test 2. Set a start and end date exactly like I did before. The only difference is this time, it now says help your students find this assignment by sharing a direct link. So again, we can go through that process. If you click this link, it will take you through to Google Classroom. Give it a second to load. Again, you can choose which class you'd like to do it for. Let's do it for the same group. And this time what I'd do is create an assignment, potentially an announcement. It's up to you how you want to do this, but I would suggest creating an assignment in this case. And again, you can call it whatever you want. Something a bit more specific than I've just called it up here, Seneca assignment, sorry. And you can go in here and you can choose the same settings. Points is quite a nice one. So you can if you want to assign a certain number of points for it, you can on your classroom in Google, but you can also just set it as unmarked. and a due date and topic as well, which is, again, some functionality that Google provides you to separate out different assignments into topics. But you could choose to do that if you wanted to. So I could put it in the number topic within this maths group if I wanted to. So again, I can assign that. When I give it a second, again, I can post that and have a look at that post and see what it would look like for my students. So then the students would basically see this assignment here. So this is that first link I sent where I said join the class. And then I've got the assignment here. So the student can click on that. You can see who it's assigned to as a teacher. But you can also just double check the instructions by clicking instructions at the top up here. And here is that link that if a student clicks on it, they can be taken straight through to their assignment. Give it a second to load. And there it is, that test 2 for them to complete, and it tells them when it's meant to be completed by, the time, etc. So that's sort of that side of things from Google Classroom. Just to, again, quickly show that process through Teams. We have, just click on the link here when you're sharing the assignment from Teams. And like as with the inviting students, again, it's a very similar process. You'll see that it looks very similar. Again, I search for my group. Type whatever I want for instructions. And I can share that with my class. And again, if I go into the channel in Microsoft Teams, I can see it pops up here. So I've had join class with Seneca, that was the first link I've shared, and then complete assignment, that was the second link I shared. And if I clicked on that link, that would take me straight through the same process so students can find their assignments that you set them. So that's that really. And then in terms of, obviously, when a student goes in and completes an assignment on Seneca, there's lots and lots of data there that is available for you to understand where your students' misconceptions are, what your students do and don't understand, what they need more support with potentially. Maybe you need to reset particular assignments as well. So what you can do when you're in Seneca, if I just switch onto a different account that has some students in it. So when you get data through, you'll basically, at the moment, no students have completed this assignment. But within the assignments tab, if I just go onto one of my past assignments, for example, I can see, if I click on one of them, I can go in and basically see all the data for those students. So I can see red, amber, green, who's done particularly well, red being below 50%, amber being below 80%, and green being above 80%. And you can see how your students have done. This is just an assignment. I just set one section for students to do. And you can do nice things on here, like you can see the status. So this means the cross is not completed, the timer is completed, but it was late. And then there would be a tick if it was completed on time. But you can sort of do things like sort by these columns. So you can do from highest score to lowest score. So you can see who's done really well or who's done not so well. And you can also change the metric down here as well. So at the moment I've got best score selected, but I can also see worst score, average score, most recent attempt, lots of different bits of data. And then that's if they are completing assignments that you set. You also want to, I imagine, have the ability to see work that they complete independently. If your students are working independently, you want to be able to understand that and still be able to use that data to inform your decisions in the classroom. So for that, we provide you the Insights tab. So if you click on Insights, what you can do is select the course in that you want to see data for. In this case, it's my Key Stage 2 course. Again, I can select the metric, those same metric options we had before to see what type of data you want. And then you can also, you can also select the date range you want. So at the moment, we've got the last 30 days, but we could do last year, for example, or we could select a custom date range to see data for. Then I can select the sections I want to see. So you might not want to see the whole course at one time because it could be quite overwhelming, the amount of data you'd have. But say you just wanted to see particular parts of courses. So again, this is an English example, but it would be the same process for any subject. let's see, I wanted to see all this data. I can select, and if you give it a moment, again, this nice red, amber, green data will come up, and you'll be able to see exactly how your students have done across all these different topics. So, and again, this metric can be changed. If I choose from best score to worst score, the data will change. If I go to most recent attempt, again, the data will change. And likewise, as before, you can sort by any of these columns. So from worst to best, best to worst. Again, that's really useful to see where interventions need to be put in place for your students. Okay. So that is all the data we can show you guys. There's also some high level, like that's like the fine level data, but there's sort of some high level data that we can show you as well. So we can also show you just like a general overview of what's been going on in your class, looking at particular learning time, the average score over a number of different topics that people have, that students have got, the sessions completed, and the number of correct answers. So that's all available there to use. And yeah, that's probably quite useful when you're thinking about looking at sort of high level metrics of whether your students have been completing work, rather than necessarily looking at individual topic level, but you can still do that within insights and assignments if you want. So that's basically all I wanted to show you from how Google Classroom and how Microsoft Teams works with Seneca, and also what you can do on Seneca. I'm going to come back and just have a look to see if there are any questions that I can answer for you. So I'm not going to be able to go through and pick these and answer these completely, but I'll pick out some ones that maybe just are particularly useful to look at. So, so question about, can we see any results in Teams, even if it's overall percentage for an assignment? And that would be useful. That's a question from Rob. Thanks, Rob. So at the moment, the data we provide is only in Seneca. So the data doesn't automatically transfer across to your other, to Microsoft Teams or to Google Classroom. But we're working actively on making this integration better, including things like for for signing in and stuff like that. So we're trying to make that process a lot smoother for you guys. And that includes the data. So thanks for that question, Rob. There's been a few people who have asked that question. One question about adding more than one teacher to a class on Seneca. So you may or may not know that there is functionality in Teams and Classroom to add more than one teacher to a class. At the moment, that's not something we're able to provide on Seneca, but it's again something that we're actively working on as part of making this process of sharing classes, sharing information between both Classroom and Teams and Seneca. So we're working on adding that functionality so you can have more than one teacher in a class. And while we're on that as well, I should also say, in terms of like single sign-on and stuff like that, that's also going to be looked at, and making sure that that's as easy as possible for your students. So how does the work, a question from Chris, how does the marking work with the system? And is it instant? Do students see their marks before the teacher? So when a student completes an assignment on Seneca, the first thing they'll see when they finish the assignment is their percentage score and what's called a memory strength. Now, the percentage score is just purely how many questions they got right, divided by how many questions they saw. So that's what you see on your teacher account. And yes, it is instant. So you might need to refresh your page to get the latest data, but it will come through instantly. Now, the other thing I mentioned was the memory strength. Now, what the memory strength does is it basically gives the student an indication of how likely they are to remember that long term. So I talked a bit about the cognitive science of Seneca earlier, and part of that is the giving students the ability to to understand how likely they are to retain information. And that will, based on our algorithms, we'll be able to calculate how likely they are to remember it, based on the spacing values, how well they've done, things like that from cognitive science that will allow us to understand that and help your students understand that as well. Okay, let's have a look at another question. So does Seneca tell Google Classroom that an assignment is complete? So again, not yet, but that's something we'll build into when we're looking at better integrations when that comes through. Okay. So question from Vicky. From a data protection point of view, are we sharing their data with you, as in their names? So the way our data protection works is each student has their own account, and they are responsible for, or that they own the data of that account. So and to give you as a teacher permission to see what's going on, they have to sort of, as I say, click that link and let you see what's going on their account. It's very similar to the way that Google Classroom works in terms of inviting students, but you can't see it until they let you actually see it. So it's the same process pretty much, but as soon as students click on that link that you shared with either Teams or Classroom, then they can see exactly what you can see, all that data. But they own the data of their account, so you don't share anything with us as a teacher. Otherwise, we'd obviously need data sharing agreements in place and stuff like that. But to get around that, each individual owns the data on their account. Question from Andrea: do we just set up the classes through our Seneca logons? So yeah, exactly. So you can set up classes through your Seneca logons. One thing I haven't mentioned actually is the integration between Microsoft Teams and having Seneca as an extra tab on Microsoft Teams. So this is something that's really interesting, really potentially useful to make sure that students are actually doing everything all in one place. So let me just show you how that works quickly. If I go into this, go into here, what you can actually do is, depending on which channel you want to do it on, you can choose to have a little Seneca section up here. So the different options you have are posts, which like your message board within your class. You then got files, which store all the files that have been shared in your OneDrive. You then got a wiki there as well, which is a place to share ideas and content. And then you've got here, I've got Seneca. So if I was to click on that, you'd see that I'd be able to load up my Seneca account here. And then it keeps it all in one place, which is quite nice for you as a teacher, but also for students, so they know how to access it and it's just there. So just to show you how to do that quickly, all you need to do is press this little plus up here. And this is where you like add different tabs and things. So there's lots and lots of options on here, really potentially useful, which I'd recommend exploring. But to get Seneca on there, you just click website, and then you'd basically call it Seneca 2 because we've already got a Seneca tab there. And then you'd want to link to this URL. So https://app.senecalearning.com. And then you can choose whether you want to post in the channel about this tab to let people know that it's there. Then when you click save, that just automatically adds this Seneca 2 tab, so it keeps it all in one place. So it's a really nice way to have that sort of sign-on really seamless for your students. So it's sort of one flowing process. Unfortunately, that sort of stuff isn't available on Google Classroom yet. But that's, I think, a really nice feature of Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to go for a couple more questions. From Faye, will this remain free? So I can't speak for Google and Microsoft Teams. I don't know what their plan is. They offer stuff for free to schools, but in terms of Seneca, so I know a lot of companies have sort of made stuff free for school closure period. We were free before COVID-19 happened. We will remain free, after this. So this is not, we're not going to start charging for Seneca. It's free for for all parents, students, and teachers to use, and it won't ever, we won't ever change that. So so the last question I'm going to pick up is about recording. It's quite a nice way to wrap up this this session. It's about, is a recording available for this session? So if you want to revisit this or share this with any colleagues, what I'd suggest you do is go onto YouTube, and if you go onto the Seneca CPD YouTube channel, then you'll be able to access this exact recording that we're doing right now. So if you're now watching that on the Seneca CPD channel, I apologize because this might seem a bit meta, but so you'll be able to access the recording straight away after this session has completed. And don't forget, I will be sending you all some key links to how to integrate with Google Classroom, how to integrate with Teams. If you don't have a Seneca account already, how to get set up and all that stuff. And also some access to some things to sign up for different programs we're running to support you to be ready for September. So I'll send all that out in an email in about half an hour. So have a look out for that in your inbox. But otherwise, have a great day. And if you've got any questions, what I suggest you do is get onto our website, and there's a chat feature on there where you can get in contact with us, and we will get back to you with an answer. Anyway, have a good evening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found it useful. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.